created, made a way for us. We didn't deserve. You chose to love us much for us on the cross. How much you care for us. How much you made a way for us. How much you redeem us and change us. Father, give us wisdom today. Open your word to us, that we might come to know you more, that we might come to grow in you more. In your most precious Son's name, amen. You know, last week, after we finished talking in some of the things I shared, I got a note dropped in the box, and I want to share a little bit of it, and not the whole thing, but just a little bit. So let me share this, and I think it has to do with what we're going to talk about this week. This is what the note said. I have become a very angry believer. I look all around, and I see only Satan taking over this world. And just once do I want to see God do a mighty thing. It's like he isn't here anymore. I really admire the honesty of that note card, because I think it's something that I think all of us at one time or another struggle with and feel. You see all the evil, all the stuff going on. You hear all the horrible stuff going on in the world, and you think, man, where's God in all this? How is it that it looks like Satan is winning the war? And we do live in a world that is increasingly hostile to Christ and to his purposes, plans, and ways, and we're tempted to ask, where's God? Why isn't he jumping in and doing something? But the reality is that it's not something new to us. The first generation of Christians faced intense persecution, and they lead towards God's people, so ones to ask those questions. And if you spend any time at all reading in the Psalms, you'll know that the authors of many of the Psalms looked around at a world in which appeared that evil prospered and good suffered, and they basically asked, where are you, God? Why aren't you here? Why aren't you at work? So I think when we ask those questions, we're in good company, as long as, like most of the psalmists, they reach the conclusion at the end that, yes, God is there. They didn't stop. In almost every psalm where it starts out with, God, where are you? Why are you not doing this? Or why are you not helping? They came to realize that God isn't absent. He's at work in ways that we just don't see. And they've also come to understand that we learned, as we've learned in our study in 1 Peter, that there's more to life than just what we see here on earth. You know, the reality is, because we're only exiles here on earth and our permanent home is in heaven, we're going to experience pain and suffering while we live here. And the only way we can possibly endure is to look ahead to the time when God will make everything right and reward righteousness and punish evil. You know, the bottom line is that in this world, there are things going on in the background that you just don't see. You know, that God is at work. That's one of the principles that the church is built on, is that God is at work around us. He's already at work. And what he does is you have to make adjustments to see what he's doing, so that he invites you to join him. Join him in his work. Perfect example. When I was still the youth pastor, a student ministry pastor, associate pastor, worship leader, a little bit of every other hat at Del Rio Community Church, we were really struggling financially. It's a long story, but the church was planted by another church, and they really didn't give up to what they were doing. And so they took out this huge debt and built this nice building, which was totally useless, but that's another story. And hired this pastor, and he quit before the church ever got finished. And so they had 8 people coming to start this church with. 8 people. But the thing is, these 2 people made a commitment to come to the church until it got started, and then they were going back to the mother church. So there wasn't a long-term commitment to seeing that ministry grow. And so they hired a pastor, and they brought him in, and 6 months later, I came up to join him as the associate pastor and all that, all the other jobs. And the two families decided they had enough growth and they left. And so here we are with a church of about 12 people at this point, with a debt of $140,000 mortgage, $12,000 a month mortgage payment. Yeah, churches don't get the luxury of long-term mortgages. It's usually a 10-year note. So we were stuck with this $12,000 a month mortgage payment. We had no idea how to pay the bills. We reached a stage where we'd get people and then we'd hit a wall because the building, the seating couldn't handle more than 70 or 80 people. And so we'd grow and then we'd hit a wall and we'd fall back. And we kept hitting that wall, and eventually it got to a point where we couldn't pay the bills. We were struggling just to make the mortgage payment. And so they had to take the pastor stepped down. He didn't actually step down. He went back to being a volunteer and gave up his salary to help the church. But we're still struggling. And we kept thinking, where's God in all this? Why isn't God at work? Why isn't God stepping in? And we struggled with this for years. And never knowing that God was already at work behind us. We just didn't see it. God was already planning something. God already had something in mind. So two things happened. Number one, we had this piece of property belonged to the building, and we were sitting on about 4 acres, and there was a half-acre lot on one corner that they never bothered to convert to. And this is Florida, so you understand this is a little weird, but they have this. They have 3 zoning. There's commercial, institutional, and residential. And one piece of property, one little corner of the section, as residential, and the city wouldn't give us a zoning, so we couldn't change it, so we couldn't build on it. So we decided we'd sell it, so we sold the property. Come to find out that there was a huge housing boom at the time we got around to this point, and we sold the property. And so we got, and we ended up selling it for like $75,000, which was an amazing amount. I mean, we still had a debt, and we still had to pay it, but that helped a lot. And anyway, a couple months later, we got a call from Walton Road Baptist Church. Please, we need you to come. We're having a note burning ceremony for our building. We've paid off the mortgage, and we've paid off the pastor's house and all this other stuff. And so we want you to come join us for this celebration. Well, let me be honest with you, we weren't real excited about it because we'd struggled so long. We had no. We're doing a lot better because of the sale of the land, but that was going to take time. We're doing a lot better because of the sale of the land, but that was going to take time to see all that, and we didn't know, And again, we weren't making enough to really pay the bills, much less the mortgage payment. And but we decided we'd go help. We help them celebrate. Because when one member suffer, all members suffer. When one member rejoices, we all rejoice. And so visit them after our church service one Sunday afternoon. And they had this. So we got free food out of it anyway. So we're sitting there, and they're talking about all these wonderful things that God has done for them, and how God has, paid this bill, and He's taking it to arrange for them to have the money to pay the mortgage. And we were glad for them, but we were kind of like, we can't, really. But they wanted us there because they had planted the church. Well, then their pastor stands up and he says, now, I want you to understand that Walton Road dropped the ball when it came to planting Del Rio Community Church. We didn't count the costs like we should have. And so we have saddled you with a debt you should never have had. We should have been there to help you. We should have been, and we didn't. And we feel like that is part of our church ministry, that we need to take care of the debt we gave you. So we are paying off your mortgage. God was at work. He was already had it all planned out. We just didn't see it until He revealed it. And there are things going on in this world that we just don't see Him doing. And so because of that, we reach a stage where we think, oh, God has left us, God has abandoned us, and God hasn't. And so for the last several, we've been talking how He's been instructing us how we are to live our lives as exiles here on earth in order to be an example for others. And for the most part, the way of living is to our human nature. It's completely contrary to the way the world wants us to be. It's not natural to